Recruiting news, commitments, and predictions for the Alabama Crimson Tide and Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal news. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime recruiting analyst and writer. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. 5hourenergy.com is where you can go to find over 15 flavors. And if you need one now, you can head to your local convenience store or grocery store. Make sure you stay energized with 5 Hour Energy. We're going to be talking all things recruiting with Alabama and Notre Dame. We're going to start off with the Crimson Tide and a very key commitment that Kalen DeBoer got, but not just a good player. In my opinion, out of all the kids that I've seen this year at corner, Jorden Edmunds would be my number one pick. Out of Sprayberry High School in Atlanta, Georgia, he was elite at Under Armour Atlanta, whether it was just coming up with deflections, interceptions, mixing up how he attacked receivers in the one-on-ones. He was the best corner there. From interviewing him, we all knew, every recruiting analyst there, that Alabama was at or near the top of the list, but he had pushed back his commitment. There was some hand-wringing over it. Well, he's still committed, and that's the bottom line. Getting him in the fold, maybe that kind of gets Alabama going in general. It doesn't hurt that they beat out schools like Tennessee and Georgia, among others, but Alabama hasn't had a quote-unquote fast start. A lot of times Saban didn't either, but Kalen DeBoer is probably pretty happy to get that one done. This is a kid, regardless of your depth chart at corner, he's going to come in and compete. He's a great kid too, kind of guy that you root for. Elite prospect. Length, size, competitiveness. He kept coming back out there. He didn't need the reps. He did it. That impressed me and a lot of other people, because sometimes the elite players, they'll head to the back of the line after they win a couple reps. Okay, I'm good. Films out that I did well. That's all I'm going to do. He didn't care. He kept coming back out. Didn't matter if it was a smaller player, a bigger player. He wanted to compete. That is very important. So Jorden Edmunds is one of the most electric players in the country, and Alabama was fortunate to get him. Also, there has been a new trend with Alabama, and this is something that I've been wondering about. I've even spoken to some people that are even more in the loop than me with regards to Alabama recruiting and how it's been so different under DeBoer compared to Nick Saban. But they have transitioned more to recruiting in the South overall, and probably more specifically along the trenches. We'll talk a little more D-line today, but just in general, I think they're recruiting a little bit more in the trenches down south, and that will behoove them long term. You're going to keep a lot of the people happy. This is political. Recruiting is political, whether you want it to be or not. Coaches, trainers, et cetera, in the South are like, what's going on here? People are having a hard time getting a hold of people at Bama, et cetera. I don't know why. That's not my area, but I've been told that by separate people, unsolicited, and it's changed. There's been more kids visiting, and we're going to start with an example of a player that I think they probably should have went after earlier than they did, and that's Tyson Bacon. He's a guy that's going to be around the campus a little bit more from what I've heard. At least there's a chance of that. Unofficial visits are always goofy because, while even an OB can be canceled, unofficials are a lot more up and down. There's a chance they're going to be in on him through the end of this recruitment, but he's committed to Tennessee, and here's why. The defensive lineman out of Hoover High School, just outside of Birmingham, was focused on by the Tennessee staff a lot more than Bama early. And but really, by all the major programs, the Vols just did the best job and made him a priority. Auburn, Alabama, and other schools dragged their feet on him. Tennessee did not. Props to them. They get the commitment. Coach L and other people, including Bacon himself, just were really impressed with how Tennessee did it. Bama's now back in that recruitment for one of the top defensive linemen, not only in Alabama, but from seeing him at Under Armour in Atlanta, I'm like, this kid's way underrated. That was one of his coming out parties, if you will. He'll make the rounds, and once people weigh him and see his length and all that, he'll get more offers and more attention. But Bama's now involved there. There's another kid, and this is a kid that, quite honestly, probably doesn't get enough attention compared to some other guys in the South, but it's because of location. He's in the very northern edge of the state of Alabama, and that's Kamarion Johnson. He's an edge rusher. Bama is the school that he grew up rooting for per On Three. I read that, and I'm like, okay, in-state kid. He's visited Alabama. He's from a program. Muscle Shoals has had some players over the years. This could go pretty quick. My prediction is, and I don't know him at all, I've never met him. My guess is he commits pretty quick to Bama. When they focus on in-state kids that grew up Bama fans, it's not very often they lose. There can be exceptions. Maybe the depth chart is not there, or maybe there's not a connection with a coach. But I'm playing the odds here, and it's not a real difficult one. Maybe Kamarion commits somewhere else, but I will be surprised if it's not Bama, and I'll be surprised if it's not by the end of June, probably even before that. I wouldn't be surprised if he committed before that, because that's just the history in the Yellowhammer State. When kids grow up, fans of the Crimson Tide, and they visit multiple times, if they're a focal point for that staff, it's probably a done deal. The only way this doesn't happen is if somebody else has really caught his attention, because at the end of the day, relationships are still the most important thing. We'll see how that goes. But again, this is a young man that is a really talented player. He's an edge rusher, again, out of Muscle Shoals, and it's in northern Alabama. Maybe Auburn or Tennessee or somebody else. It depends on how the visits go. Can keep him from committing, but I think it's going to be the Tide, and I think it's going to be sooner rather than later. Staying within the state of Alabama, I just want to bring up a couple of kids. They've got some visits coming up. Xavier Crowell, that's a kid out of Jackson, Alabama. They got multiple kids at that program. They are loaded. They won the state championship last year. Congrats to Jackson High School for that. But Xavier Crowell is a kid that changed his class. He was supposed to be 27 and might be the best running back in 27, but he reclassed to 26. Hasn't really changed anything with his recruitment. He still has all the Bama offer, Georgia, Auburn, all these different schools. This could come down to Bama, and it could come down to Auburn, maybe Florida State, like they've had him on campus. But again, when Alabama really focuses in state, they're hard to beat. It is the state university. We'll see if that changes, but I haven't heard any reason to believe that Bama won't win in the end. I'm not saying they're favoring like Kamarion. I know that's a kid that roots for the Tide. That's easy. I don't know Crowell. I've never met him, so I'm not going to say anything about that. But if they get him on campus again and they get the OV, I like the Tide there. We'll see if that ends up being the case. I don't have any intel on the Auburn side of this, but that's a really important one. Finally, and this is one that I think will go to the end, it may be the most important recruitment in the state. Remember me talking about players in the trenches? Bama is recruiting Anthony Jones harder. Auburn, I'm not sure what happened. At one point, it looked like he was going to commit there last year, maybe even at their Big Cat weekend, but he's dragged it out. Oregon and all these other schools are going to continue to make a run at him, Miami, etc. I still think in the end it will be Bama or Auburn. It could go either way. And I don't have an exact prediction. I need to go see him and ask him. I haven't interviewed him in about a year. But if Anthony Jones ends up at Bama, they can kind of get the monkey off their back about in-state recruiting, because he's probably the number one player in state in terms of long-term upside if everything worked out, because pass rushers are just so hard to find. You could pick Crowell, you could pick C.D. Morgan, a lot of different guys. You could certainly pick Landon Duckworth because he's a quarterback, whatever player. But pass rushers that look like Anthony Jones are pretty rare. This will not be a recruitment that ends quickly, even if he does commit, because nobody's going to give up on a 6'5", 240-pound pass rusher that is absolutely jacked and a great kid too. But this is very important for Bama. My prediction is it will go down to the end. I don't know where he's going. I don't have it to that point yet, but Bama's more in it now than they have been. Watch out for the Crimson Tide there. When we come back, we're going to talk all things Fighting Irish recruiting. Got a couple predictions, including what's going to happen at the running back position. They're in on some dudes at the running back spot for the Fighting Irish. That is next here on the Portal Podcast. We're all about the stats because numbers don't lie. And when it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers are on an MVP level. With the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds, it can quite literally carry the whole team, plus the gear, wherever you need to go. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. And with room For up to 8 people, the Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. This show is also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 in bonus bets to use on everything from buzzer beaters, Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. For me, I still like the Cinderella stories the most. I know this year's Sweet 16 certainly featured more P4 schools, and that's fine, but there's still going to be a Cinderella player. Who ends up being that guy that drops 30 in a big game or hits like 7 out of 10 from behind the arc? I love talking about that kind of stuff. It makes the tournament a blast. Plus, it's very easy to use the FanDuel app to find out what you need to be doing and looking at the spreads. The app's great. Make sure you check it out. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Notre Dame has a bunch of kids visiting, and there's a commitment coming up I'll talk about in a couple of minutes. But I want to focus on the running back position in particular. Jawan Sider comes to Notre Dame from Penn State, and I had told Zach Sako from Locked On Nittany Lions a year and a half ago that I thought Jawan was the best recruiter in the country one-on-one. He was recently interviewed about that, and it's about relationships and making sure everybody's on the same page. It was pretty basic, and it was refreshing because he was just honest about this is how it works. Now, with that in mind, you still only have so many spots mathematically to make it work. I don't know how many guys Notre Dame would take, but I assume just 2. Mickens is a guy they're recruiting out of the state of Pennsylvania, committed to Penn State. He got him to commit there before he came to Notre Dame. That's somebody that's going to take an OV. Put him on the back burner for a second. You have Bonner, the elite, I love his film, the elite running back out of Valencia, California, Brian Bonner. He's somebody that can fly. He's getting ready to visit. And you're not even done there. You just had Javion Osborne come in, who I think is a top 5 running back conservatively nationally. You could argue he's number 1. He's out of Forney, Texas, on the edge of Dallas. He visited. He's got the Irish top of the board right now. And you're still not done because you got Jonas Walton that's supposed to visit in April, the young man out of Central High School in Carrollton, Georgia. They're all elite players. Who do you get and how does it work out? Here is my Notre Dame recruiting prediction. First man, first commitment. I don't know how that will go, but the first one that wants to pull the trigger, that's the one it's going to be. I thought it was going to be Osborne, but maybe he wants to take more trips. He hasn't pulled the trigger. Walton doesn't visit. I don't know what the date is. It's sometime in April, but he's supposed to visit. Again, he's a kid out of the state of Georgia at Central High School in Carrollton. And then you also got Brian Bonner out of Valencia. I think his is the most important, not just because it's first. Matter of fact, it's today, tomorrow, whatever. Bonner's is coming up. If he doesn't commit because he lives in California, just outside of Los Angeles, it's less likely that he's in the class than some of these other guys because it's harder to get from LA to Notre Dame. It's not like he's going to take a whole bunch of unofficials. I wouldn't imagine. If he commits, though, that would put the pressure on, hypothetically, somebody else. Hey, do I want to get on board? Because whether I like Sider or not, he's only got so many spots in this class. And for the record, Notre Dame took one back last year. Good player, James out of the state of New Jersey, but they're probably going to take 2. And you know he likes Mickens. Does that put more pressure on Walton? Or maybe, well, any running back they're recruiting, to be honest. How does that work? I would love to be in that meeting because it's 6 one way, half dozen the other. These are all really good backs. They're all national top 10 kids. They're all fits for Notre Dame. I don't know how you do it. I'm a pretty opinionated guy, but I wouldn't want to say, well, we get, let's say again, they get Bonner. We need to take the bigger back. We need to wait on Mickens. Would you really do that? Because Messiah Mickens is the biggest of the group. He's over 200 pounds. I'd say he's 215, give or take. But do you do that if somebody like Jonas Walton comes and visits and he really hits it off with Sider, somebody he didn't recruit that much, if at all. I can't remember how much, but I don't think Penn State was that involved with him. If he hits it off with him and wants to commit, you're going to have to make a tough decision there. And again, I'm not making the prediction on it in regards to that, but after the first player commits, whomever it may be, there will be a really tough conversation, not only for the Irish staff, but for the parents, guardians, and or coaches, trainers, what have you, with the other players that are involved in Notre Dame with the recruiting of the running back position, because you only got 2 spots. This is unusual to have so many guys that are really good in a short amount of time, but it's a possibility, something to think about with Notre Dame. As for a couple other predictions for them, they've got a lot of guys coming in on campus. I don't know if it's so much a prediction as it needs to happen here. Notre Dame wide receiver recruiting, there has been more than just hand-wringing, and rightfully so, in terms of some of the misses they've had over the last year or two. For whatever reason, Notre Dame has missed on some of the kids that were fits they seem to be leading for, and then they would fade. Fair enough. Right now, there's a kid that I think fits them to a T in terms of all the things I've heard about him. I don't know him personally, but just from what I'm told, and he fits the profile of a player they got on campus right now in Greathouse, who's a power slot, and that's Kadon Finley, and they're both, ironically, Lone Star State players. Kadon Finley is supposed to visit Notre Dame again. He's been to campus before. He's a priority recruit. If they don't get him in the boat, I guess I'll make this prediction. If they don't get him in the boat by the end of April, I would start to worry if I was Notre Dame. Now, I know he's supposed to take a visit later on and all that, but this is a kid because of the fit. They need players at the receiver position. That would worry me. Secondly, if they have all these guys coming in and they got players across the board, they've done a really good job of getting guys on campus throughout spring. If they don't get some more commitments this spring before the OB start, I would be shocked. Just want to throw that out there. Finally, I want to make the other point just for the record. Most people are saying Rodney Dunham is going to go to Notre Dame. Just in general, this is an overview of a prediction here. Notre Dame doesn't get 5-star defensive ends out of the high school ranks. They just don't. They just flat out do not. They get a lot of 4-star guys. They've always gotten a lot of 4-star guys, but some of the networks have him as a 5-star. I believe On 3, just off the top of my head, even has him like number 6 overall or something like that, like really high. He's out of Myers Park High School in Charlotte. So the prediction isn't about the players so much because I do not know Dunham. I have no idea. I'm just going by if everybody's saying it, it's obvious that Notre Dame is the leader there. The following is my prediction on Notre Dame. If they get 1 or 2 guys a year, just on average, that are especially at the critical spots, the end, the tackle, quarterback, etc., that are 5 stars, and they continue the rest of the recruiting just the same, you're going to see a program that's top 5. I've said for a long time, I thought they were second tier as a program because they were just a couple players short. Usually a pass rusher, a D tackle, that's still their spot besides receiver. They need to do a little better at D tackle, but they're recruiting pretty well there too. If they get 1 or 2 more, Notre Dame's going to be in the top 5 pretty much every year. They were on that cusp anyway, and they had the right chemistry last year to make the run to the college football championship game before losing to Ohio State. But if you add just 1 or 2 more elite players to your roster each year, Notre Dame is going to be able to do pretty much what they want because their culture under Marcus Freeman has been tremendous. They just sometimes came up a little short in talent in some of the games in the last 10, 15 years. They've changed that. Freeman is obviously a much better recruiter one-on-one than what Brian Kelly was. He's got an easier gig at LSU to recruit with so much local stuff that he can pull from, but that's another story. Freeman's a better fit for Notre Dame, I think, and his ability to be a one-on-one recruiter and helping out Coach Washington or whoever needs help across the board. I think they're going to start seeing more of the elite kids, top 50 players conservatively pick the Irish. We'll see if I'm right or wrong, but again, if they do, this is going to be a top 5 program. Thank you very much for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. I truly appreciate you stopping in to talk about all the different happenings in recruiting, NIL, and the transfer portal. Speaking of that last point with the portal, that's getting ready to open up again. Notre Dame, Alabama, and everybody else. There's going to be a lot of predictions with that, and you're going to see a lot of kids hit the portal. Going to have a lot of news about who's going where and why coming up in a few weeks on the portal. So make sure you check back, hit that like button, that notification bell, and share this podcast. We will see you again soon.